once thought that the greatest pain for a wife was discovering her husband's affair. But in reality, the deeper pain was realizing that I had grown used to the betrayal, to the point where I no longer wanted to hurt or hold on. Today, I met a man, the husband of my husband's mistress. I thought I would feel satisfied exposing the truth, but after just a few words from him, I found myself questioning everything. What is it that I truly want? I sat in silence, staring at my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen. The call had just ended, and though I didn't hear the conversation, I already knew who it was. Her. The woman my husband had been sneaking around with for months. The realization should have made my blood boil, should have left me trembling with anger, but strangely, I felt nothing. No rage, no heartbreak, just an eerie sense of detachment. I had spent too long drowning in pain, and maybe, just maybe, I had finally surfaced. It all started 6 months ago, the night I stumbled upon the first clue. A simple message on his phone, hidden under a harmless contact name. At first, I convinced myself it was nothing. A misunderstanding, a mistake. But late at night, when he thought I was asleep, I heard the hushed whispers, the cautious footsteps outside our bedroom door. That was when I knew. My husband, the man I had trusted, the father of my children, was having an affair. He was a respected math teacher, someone students looked up to, a strict yet loving father at home. The thought of him sneaking around like some reckless teenager whispering sweet nothings into another woman's ear felt absurd. And yet, the evidence was undeniable. I didn't confront him right away. Unlike the furious wives in stories, throwing plates and screaming accusations, I chose a different path, one of silence and observation. I needed proof, not just for myself, but to control how this story would end. So I waited, watching his every move, collecting every message, every secret meeting. I became an expert at deception, mirroring the very lies he spun behind my back. And what I found only deepened my disgust. Their messages weren't just filled with passion, but with careful reminders. Don't let the family suspect anything. Don't neglect your responsibilities. How ironic. Even in their betrayal, they played the role of responsible adults. If it weren't my life unraveling before me, I might have laughed at the absurdity. Each day I pretended nothing had changed. I smiled at him over dinner, tucked my children into bed, and played the part of the clueless wife. But inside, I was drowning. The weight of the secret, of knowing my husband belonged to someone else, was suffocating. The worst part? He had no idea I knew. I wondered how long he planned to keep up this charade. Did he think I was that blind, that foolish? Or was he waiting for the right moment to leave? I had two choices. Expose him now and let everything explode into chaos, or wait for the perfect moment when I held all the power. And so, I made a decision. I wouldn't cry, I wouldn't beg, I wouldn't be the woman he could pity. I would play this game my way. And when the time came, it wouldn't be me drowning in regret. It would be him. I didn't lash out. I didn't throw accusations at him in the middle of the night or demand an explanation for every whispered phone call. Instead, I played the long game. Patience. That was the key. While my husband carried on his affair thinking he was careful, I was one step ahead. Every time he slipped up, even slightly, I took note. A lingering glance at his phone when a message came in. The way his expression shifted when I walked into the room while he was typing. The faint scent of unfamiliar perfume on his shirt after work. I collected it all, piece by piece, like a detective assembling the final proof of a crime. But gathering evidence wasn't enough. I needed a plan. A confrontation without leverage would only lead to excuses, to half-hearted apologies, to promises I no longer cared to hear. No, I wanted control. And to have that, I needed something undeniable. So I waited. Nights stretched into weeks, and I played the role of the oblivious wife perfectly. I still packed his lunches, still kissed him goodbye at the door. I still lay beside him at night, even though the space between us had grown into an invisible chasm neither of us acknowledged. And then, one evening, he made his biggest mistake yet. His phone was left on the kitchen counter, unlocked. It was almost too easy. I love her, he admitted, his voice quieter now, enough to hope she would realize her mistake on her own. I didn't want to be the one to tell her she was ruining everything. I wanted her to see it, to feel it, and to choose to stop. I stared at him, trying to comprehend his logic. She didn't choose to stop, I said flatly. His expression darkened slightly. No, she didn't. For the first time, I felt something unexpected. Not anger, not satisfaction, just sadness. We were two strangers, bound together by betrayal. But while I had come here ready to burn everything down, he had chosen a different path. And suddenly, I wasn't so sure which one of us was right. I stared at him, my mind struggling to grasp his words. I knew. I was just waiting. Waiting? For what? For his wife to suddenly realize she was wrong and come running back into his arms? It sounded foolish, desperate even. But as I looked into his steady gaze, I didn't see desperation. I saw something else. Something unsettling, acceptance. The weight of that realization settled heavily in my chest. I had spent months drowning in anger, in silent suffering, clutching onto every message, every call log, every piece of evidence like a weapon I could use to strike back when the time was right. And yet here he was, fully aware, yet completely unwilling to destroy what was left of his wife's dignity. I couldn't understand him. I didn't want to understand him. Then why did you agree to meet me? I finally asked. He exhaled slowly as if he had been expecting that question. To stop you from making the same mistake I almost made. I frowned, gripping my coffee cup tightly. What mistake? His fingers tapped lightly against the table before he answered. Holding on to anger when you don't need to, letting it consume you, letting it turn you into someone you don't recognize. I nearly laughed at the irony. And yet, you just admitted your marriage is over. He nodded, his expression unreadable. Yes, but it's ending on my terms, not in a fit of rage, not in public humiliation, just ending. His words left a bitter taste in my mouth. I had come here thinking we would share the same rage, the same hunger for revenge, that we would take comfort in each other's pain. But instead, he was offering me something else, something I wasn't sure I wanted. Closure. I wasn't searching for anything specific, I already knew what I would find. But what I didn't expect was the sheer volume of their conversations. The way they spoke to each other, careful yet intimate, as if their entire world existed in those secret exchanges. I miss you. Be careful. Don't let her suspect anything. I hate lying to my family, but I can't stop thinking about you. I felt sick. And yet, I didn't cry. I had already spent too many nights breaking apart in silence. Instead, I did what I had come to do. I forwarded every incriminating message to myself, making sure there was no way for him to cover his tracks. Then, as quietly as I had entered, I slipped out of the room and put his phone back exactly where he left it. He never knew. Not that night. Not the next day. He carried on as usual, utterly unaware that his world was now in my hands, and I wasn't going to waste this opportunity. The question wasn't whether I had enough proof. I did. The question was, what would I do with it? Most wives would confront their cheating husbands immediately, demand answers, scream, cry, make threats. But I wanted something more. I didn't just want my husband to suffer. I wanted the woman he loved to suffer too. And that's when I knew exactly what my next move would be. I was going to find her husband. The moment I decided to meet her husband, a strange sense of purpose filled me. I wasn't just a betrayed wife drowning in silent heartbreak. I had a plan. A mission. And for the first time in months, I felt in control. I spent days gathering information, carefully tracing the pieces of their affair back to her personal life. I learned her husband's name, where he worked, and even which coffee shop he liked to visit on weekends. It was surprisingly easy. People share so much online without even realizing it. When I finally reached out to him, I kept it simple. We need to talk. It's about your wife. No accusations, no explanation, just enough to make sure he would come. He agreed immediately. The meeting was set for a quiet Saturday afternoon at a small cafe. I arrived early, my heart pounding in my chest. What kind of man was he? Would he explode in rage? Break down in grief? Would he blame me? And then I saw him. I expected someone bitter, hardened by betrayal. But instead, a man in his early 40s walked in, dressed neatly, carrying an air of calm confidence. He had the kind of presence that drew attention effortlessly, not because he was loud, but because he was composed. For a brief second I hesitated. Did he already know? Was I about to destroy the life of a man who had been living in blissful ignorance? But when his eyes met mine, I realized the truth. He already knew. He sat down across from me, folding his hands neatly on the table. You must be her. His voice was steady, devoid of surprise. I slid my phone toward him, the screen glowing with proof of the affair. He didn't reach for it. I don't need to see it, he said simply. I blinked. You already know? A faint, almost sad smile crossed his face. I've known for a while. The answer stunned me. Then why? Why haven't I done anything? He finished for me. Because knowing something and acting on it are two very different things. I didn't understand. If he knew his wife was unfaithful, why hadn't he confronted her? Why hadn't he fought for their marriage, or left? His next words made my breath catch.